Chapter 44. Gathering Hands. Upon hearing this, Hiroshi's mood turned heavy. Ever since the establishment of the Federation, the Dragon Federation, its rapid development had secured a significant international standing. With the rise of a major power, inevitably came the competition for resources, and as the Federation grew, it naturally encroached on interests that once belonged to other nations. For this reason, the European Union, bearing the banner of the bald eagle, viewed the Dragon Federation as a thorn in its side, an eyesore. Over the past few decades, the European Union had used various despicable methods to hinder the Dragon Federation's development, resorting to all possible means, which was infuriating and shameless to the extreme. However, over the years, the European Union had only dared to impose technological or commercial blockades against the Federation, never daring to provoke a real conflict or war. Everyone understood that a war between two powerful nations would lead to consequences no one could bear. But this world upheaval had driven the European Union completely mad. The Federation was an agricultural powerhouse with vast territory, surpassing the European Union by far in terms of grain production and storage. To put it bluntly, in such a harsh environment, the Federation could still sustain itself for decades with its stored grains and soil-less cultivation techniques, while the European Union could not. Some had speculated that the European Union would exhaust its grain reserves within 3 months, and the first batch of soil-less cultivated grains wouldn't mature in time either. In other words, 3 months later, the European Union would face a situation where a large number of people would starve. To stabilize the situation, they would have no choice but to import food from other countries. However, in this current world upheaval, which country would have surplus food to export to the infamous European Union? Contemplating this consequence, the leader of the European Union, Whitestone, was in a panic. So, yesterday afternoon, the European Union mobilized tens of thousands of troops, an aircraft carrier, 10 fleets, and hundreds of destroyers, all openly coming near the South Sea, clearly indicating their readiness for war. Although Whitestone's intention might not have been to provoke an actual war, but rather to use military intimidation to pave the way for future grain imports from the Dragon Federation, how could the Dragon Federation's central government yield on matters of national dignity? Haven't you seen the Great Wall of Steel stretching for thousands of miles, forged from the unyielding iron bones of countless soldiers? In matters of national dignity, over the millennia, the ancestors of the Dragon Federation had never bowed to any fierce enemy. In response to the European Union's provocation, the Dragon Federation's central government's reaction was swift and decisive, without diplomatic negotiations, without condemnation, immediately mobilizing 100,000 soldiers from the 3 major military districts to rush to the coastline. Damn it! Those grain raiders should all be shot. With a war about to break out on the border, they're still causing internal chaos. They're a bunch of damn scoundrels. Jimmy gritted his teeth and cursed. It's just that I don't have any weapons. If I did, I'd really want to fight them. Hearing this, Hiroshi's heart felt heavy. Since many of the South City's military and police forces had been deployed elsewhere, his farm might be vulnerable if those raiders set their sights on it. Although he had ample defenses within the farm, a large enough group could overrun the gates easily. Thinking of this, Hiroshi asked, "Jimmy, have you seen these raiders?" Jimmy's eyes reddened with anger. He spat out, "I haven't seen them myself, but they raided my younger brother's restaurant. All the food in the cold storage was taken. There were about 30 or 40 of them, all big and strong, not a single one over 40. My younger brother got shot, and he's in the hospital ICU now." Hiroshi now had a basic understanding of these grain raiders, who had been recently causing havoc in the area. 30 to 40 strong men, armed with a dozen or so homemade shotguns, could easily establish themselves as local bandits in any other time. These people don't dare to enter the urban areas. They're just prowling around the nearby towns. They've raided dozens of supermarkets, grain stations, and restaurants. Jimmy became increasingly agitated as he spoke, unable to hold back his disgust. They're a bunch of scoundrels. One day, they'll get what's coming to them. Jimmy, why do you place your hopes on others? Hiroshi suddenly spoke up, staring seriously at Jimmy's face. Why can't we solve this problem ourselves? Jimmy was stunned. as if he had heard something unimaginable. His expression was one of disbelief, stammering, "You? What did you say?" I said, "How about we take care of these raiders ourselves?" Hiroshi's tone was grave, enunciating each word. I do want to get rid of them, but, Jimmy's deep-seated fear prevented his thoughts from changing so quickly. Hearing Hiroshi's suggestion, he instinctively felt fear. It's just the two of us against so many people, and they have guns. The issue of weapons, I'll handle. Hiroshi spoke softly. As for your concern about persuading people, don't worry. Jimmy fell into thought. Now, he no longer felt the initial panic. Upon careful consideration, Hiroshi's suggestion resonated deeply with him. But Jimmy looked at Hiroshi awkwardly and said, "Those who have been raided by them are all scared. I'm afraid it's hard to convince them with just words." Hiroshi smiled faintly at this reaction. "Are you worried about the issue of weapons? You think you won't convince them just by talking?" Jimmy smiled somewhat embarrassedly. Indeed, that was the case. In this post-apocalyptic world, facing an armed group with shotguns, if one lacked the confidence and strength, 99% of people wouldn't agree to Hiroshi's proposal. "You don't need to worry about that," Hiroshi said after a moment of silence. From his pocket, he pulled out a revolver and casually waved it in front of Jimmy. Then he aimed at a distant iron barrel and pulled the trigger. After a deafening sound, 2 holes pierced through the iron barrel. Jimmy was dumbfounded. How do you have a gun?" Jimmy stammered. "Who doesn't have a few secrets?" Hiroshi didn't elaborate. Instead, he reholstered the revolver and said, "Jimmy, go ahead and gather people. Tell them that as long as they have the courage for revenge, I'll make sure they won't be at a disadvantage in terms of weapons."